Okay, hello and welcome to Ed on EdTech, where we're going to talk a little bit, we're live at ACM CHI 2018, and I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the different things that I saw during the conference so far, and I'll talk a little bit about the video previews that I've been posting on the web. So let's go. All right, so the first day, our keynote speaker was Christian Rudder. And Christian is originally from OkCupid. He did a lot of the data science behind how people behave in an online dating site. And one of the major insights kind of relates to something that's well known in psychology, which is the attractiveness bias. So people tend to want to associate with people at roughly the same level of attractiveness. And this tends to bias them for a lot of other things, like they associate their personality with that bias, and they associate other things like their intelligence, and they associate a lot of other characteristics of the person, even though they don't know anything about that person. Like they just make the assumption that they have a great personality, for example. And these types of biases exist, and he was kind of making it clear that they exist. And it was a little bit challenging because it wasn't super clear what designers would do about this. But I think being aware of our cognitive biases is really important. And one of the other things that I'd comment on was moving. So especially when it comes to the creation of, say, technologies that support it. I think about Daniel Kahneman's thinking fast and thinking slow. And when we are kind of in the thinking fast site, so we're on a website and we're just clicking on stuff, that's the fast mentality. And maybe that's the type of behavior that we see a lot on the web. And so, yeah, it seems like horribly biased, and it's because, I mean, we're reacting fairly quickly, and a lot of the usability kind of makes things faster. It makes us react faster, it makes us think less and act more. And so as a result, we tend to have interfaces that kind of encourage speed, but maybe don't encourage as much reflection. So to me, it was an interesting result. And it's something that I know caused a lot of controversy and a lot of discussion around the diversity at CHI, but I think it's a good thing that we had that discussion at the beginning, because people during the conference have had chances to speak with each other, and there was like a CHI kind of diversity section. There was a couple discussions about that. So the conversation has continued, which is really encouraging to see. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the first day video, and then we'll have a little bit of discussion about what happened there. Okay, so okay, so in the first video, pretty much everything that you see there is from the demo reception. And so these are all of the different demonstrations that were presented during the conference. This is like really only a very, very small subsection of them. And in the demo reception, so you see a lot of novel technologies. Like there was one about like kind of simulating walking on different surfaces like snow. There were other technologies about virtual reality, like moving windows. There was even like a fidget spinner that kind of would detect your like your heart rate and different biofeedback information, which was interesting. But I think that during the video, you also see kind of some interviews, and I had a chance to meet with Janice Tisha Samuels, and she's the executive director of the National Youth Art Movement. You think of like we have the March for Our Lives. this is kind of like art for our lives. So this is the same kind of topic. It's about gun control, but it's done in a way that focuses a lot on how artists can express themselves using these kind of large, tall banners. So basically, like a number of artists came together, they created these banners, and they bring the banners to places all over Chicago to kind of bring awareness of the stories of each one of these individuals who were affected by gun violence. And to me, it's a really interesting aspect from an education and technology perspective, because the stories that we tell, the narratives that we tell, are so important for memorability. They're so important for making people think in different ways or outside of their context. And especially when it comes to mirroring the emotions of others, like how was that person feeling? You really, really need the storytelling component. So I'm encouraged to see that type of work. I think we need more of that type of work to bring awareness. And so it was really nice to see it at CHI. So I will also, okay, I think now I'll move into day 2, and maybe we'll go into some of the stuff that was presented there.
Yup. So good.
Okay, so in the second video, what you saw kind of at the beginning, especially with that mobile device that was turning, was the student game design competition. And so in there, like, this was a little simple activity. You just turn it and then it matches the same color. So the circle matches the outside color. And it's kind of like a fun activity. There were other ones that related to bringing awareness to people who have anxiety. So there was like an anxiety simulator type interface. And then there were other ones where you're supposed to mirror the emotions of a character. So you see a character and you're trying to mirror the emotion using like the webcam that's built into the camera. I thought that was like, it's just talking about, you know, some of the challenges that people have, like maybe awareness of anxiety or being able to mirror other people's emotions as being a challenge. So it provides some tools that could help with that, which I thought was really cool, because the time that they have to implement is really just like the beginning of the conference. So there's just like a few hours really to get everything done. So what they did in that short period of time is pretty incredible. Now afterwards, you saw like this large performance on the stage and the guy with guitar and, you know, a lot of singing. So this group is called Choir, and they are a group that, you know, tries to make choir or singing much more accessible to a huge audience. So at CHI, you had pretty much like 1,000 people in the audience, all singing the songs together. It was a really cool experience. You know, they're all clapping together. They're really, really engaged. And they talked about how this kind of notion of singing in a choir seems like it seems kind of mundane, but the kinds of impacts that they've had and the scale at which they're able to, you know, run events is just incredible. Like they run it at, like, I think 2 times weekly in Toronto, and during some major events, they typically will draw in a huge crowd. So it's just really, it's a really neat way of thinking from the perspective that, yeah, like, we can take huge risks, and we can try to do something that seems kind of, you know, niche, kind of novel, but we can see that actually there's a big audience. If you follow the Choir YouTube channel, you'll find that they have a ton of followers, and they have this like video with Rick Astley, you know, doing the whole Rickroll video, kind of live with the whole choir, like an audience. It's just this amazing experience, amazing feeling. So it's something that they were trying to share at CHI. And I see it from the perspective of inclusion is often really challenging. You think that, well, maybe I don't sing as well, or maybe I don't have the skill of somebody else to sing kind of in a choir. But this kind of encouragement, like it's less a choir and more a system of encouragement for people of all ages and walks of life to be active, to participate in this community. And so that kind of inclusiveness in the community, I think, is really unique. And it's something that I think we can benefit a lot in all aspects. It could be in the workplace, but also in education as well. So now let's take a look at the last day, and we will look at the video. So during the third day, you see me kind of walking around a lot. I had an opportunity to connect with the Interactive Surfaces and Spaces Steering Committee just to talk a little bit about the future of the conference and where things are going to be going for the conference. And I think the thing that's really nice is many researchers are starting to think about the publication process, about making it more open. So instead of being able to just like submit to a conference one time in a year, maybe you could submit 4 times during the year. So it's more just in time. Like think of it like more of using like a YouTube model for publication. So whenever your research is ready, you have an opportunity to publish to the conference. I think this is really good. It's good from a researcher perspective in terms of being accessible, but it's also good from a industry perspective, because if you have an industry project, an application paper could be submitted at any time that fits with when you say publish your project or your product is completed. So this is a good thing. In the video, you also saw there was the telepresence robot. So there's kind of like you walk up to it and there's a display and there's a camera at the top. There's quite a few telepresence robots at CHI, and it's been there for a few years. But what it allows somebody to do is somebody who can't make it to the conference, they can attend remotely. They can even walk into sessions, but be involved with those casual conversations with others. And I did have a chance to chat with somebody who was doing a live stream from one of these telepresence robots. So it was a fun experience. And one of the other things that was presented, you kind of saw it at the beginning and at the end. So there's some people holding up an award. So this was the video showcase. So at CHI, we encourage a lot of researchers to publish videos of their work, and some of the best videos get selected by the video showcase chairs to be presented like in a big public forum. And there's some awards that were given out. So that award that you saw was, we call it the Golden Mouse Award. So in our research field, I don't know, maybe it's the equivalent of the Emmys. But it just talked about like a project. This particular project was kind of a way of moving little water droplets. It was quite neat, and the production values were really good. So it was very novel and really good production values. And so they thought this was a really great example. So congratulations to Dr. Ishii and his team on winning that award. Now, one of the other presentations, which I found really interesting, was it was a cultural presentation about life in the future, say in places in California where housing prices have just gone up the roof. They talked about what would technology do to help maintain the culture of the people who are already there. And I really like this because it was, one, it was creative, and two, it was like very novel, like lots of new technology. They even used, I think, green screening. Like this is like a full-on film production. It was really incredible. And that combined with the cultural context. And I find that, especially when it comes to creativity, having that additional context is really, really important. Actually, I was really lucky to have the opportunity to attend a presentation about how people are using technology for ways that perhaps the designers of the original technology had not intended. So there was one presentation about Facebook groups and their use in Venezuela to support a bartering economy. So the concept is, I maybe have some toothpaste, and what I really need is some rice. But if I were to purchase this in a store, one, it might not be available, and two, because of the inflation in the economy, I have to bring like a big stack of cash that I may not have in that economy. And so to me, this was a really interesting concept, because it just talked about, how people are using the technology. What about scams? How are we protecting people? Like, what about moderation? Who are the moderators that prevent people from falling into these common traps? Because many people have access to Facebook, but they may not have knowledge that there's somebody out there who's just trying to take their stuff. Maybe somebody put inside that can of toothpaste like just a carrot inside it. So it feels right, but you didn't open it, and so, it turns out it's not what you were looking for. That was interesting to see how it's used. There was another paper that was presented about Twitter use during Hurricane Sandy, and it talked about how people would take the technology and just apply it like a chat channel at the beginning. So they're responding like right away. They're trying to get information, and then later they're still using Twitter, using the same platform, but they're much more reflective about the things that they're posting. And so it talks about how this tool is just used over time, which I thought was quite interesting. Like, I'm always interested in the world of practice. I serve as one of the case studies chairs for the conference. And one of the things that I really like about CHI, especially this year, we have about 3,500 attendees. And of those, I think about 580 of them are industry. Like, they specified industry as where they come from, so not academia and not government. And I was really encouraged. So there's quite a few people. Every so often, I'll go up to somebody from industry who has they have a little practitioner, the green practitioner badge, and I'll ask them, "Oh, great! So how did you get into the conference? Does your employer support you going here?" Because there is a lot of cost to attending a conference like this, but I think a lot of employers are starting to see that, well, there's good value, especially anybody who builds like products that are generally used. And to me, that's the really interesting part about CHI, and the thing that encourages me probably the most is that you're going to see a lot of very interesting, very novel research here in the conference, but because there's that connection to the industry and practitioner side, you're going to see many of those ideas appear in products, because the people who are working on those products are attending conferences like CHI to learn about some of the best practices that they can apply to their own work. So if you are a practitioner, I would definitely encourage you to consider CHI, like the case studies track, or ISS, for example. They have an applications paper track. They're trying to encourage a lot more industry participation. And so I've been very fortunate for myself to be able to bridge a little bit of the academia and then the industry side, so the research and the industry side. And we definitely, I feel like we definitely benefit when we're aware of the research that happens in industry, especially from an education and technology. Like, people want to know that the technologies that they're working on are well supported by the research, and they are something that other people have already looked at and they found to be quite successful. Or maybe there's new forms of storytelling. Sometimes we see with like novel technologies, there's ways that people can tell stories that they could not before. One that was interesting to me was virtual reality, how there was kind of this notion of the parallel narrative. So, when you're turning your head in virtual reality, there could be multiple stories going on. There was one on this side, one on this side. So one of the researchers decided, well, why don't I create two parallel stories? So it was like, if you turned your head to this side, then you had the perspective of the man in the conversation. If you turned your head to this side, you had the perspective of the woman in the same conversation. So the audio is the same, but you're seeing it from the two different perspectives. And I thought, oh, that's really cool. Like simply that the head turn can kind of be like a transition in storytelling here. And so like there's a lot of discussion around your sense of like, are you a character or are you an observer in a virtual reality environment? Like if you look down, should you be seeing a body? Should you be able to interact? Or if you are interacting, like how does that affect the story? So we're in an interesting time in terms of understanding storytelling for virtual reality. With that, that's pretty much all I have. I want to thank you first of all for watching. If you like this video, just give it a thumbs up. And if there's any particular piece of work that I wasn't explaining very clearly, just let me know in the comments below. I'm happy to answer them offline. And if you're interested in how technology is impacting the world of education, definitely consider subscribing. And thanks again. I'll see you in the next one.